Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the director of the Game Developers Conference, Megan Scavio.
Good morning, everyone. Wow. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to GDC 25. Okay, so before I introduce our keynote this morning, I did want to take the opportunity to say happy birthday to someone very important to the GDC. So if Facebook didn't lie to me this morning, today is Gordon Walton's birthday. I know. So Gordon hails from Origin Systems, Sony Online Entertainment. He was at BioWare Austin recently and now at Playdom. And he is one of 2 or 3 people that can honestly say they've been to all 25 GDCs. So happy birthday, Gordon, if you're out there. Okay. So this morning's keynote presenter is also a longtime friend of the GDC. He first appeared on this keynote stage in 2005, where he gave us the first information about the technology behind the console then codenamed Revolution. It's now known, obviously, as the Wii. He also appeared in 2006, where he spoke about disrupting development and introduced the Western development community to philosophies on engaging new players. Then, returning in 2009, he debuted a new game from the Legend of Zelda franchise, one of my personal favorites. We are honored and pleased to welcome him back to the keynote stage for our 25th conference. Nintendo continues to innovate and captivate developers and gamers alike, and we're looking forward to his unique insights in both the history and future of the game business. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Satoru Iwata.
Good morning, and thank you for again inviting me to GDC. During the year, one of my most important jobs is to speak to people, to reporters, to financial analysts, to business partners, and many others. But speaking at this event is special because here, today, I have the chance to speak to my colleagues. I am happy to be here. I guess some of you may have come today because you figured, maybe I can learn something. Well, I hope that might be true. But honestly, the value of GDC is that all developers can learn from each other. Nintendo is no exception. And this year, we have a lot to talk about. We've all heard what the development community is saying. It's very confusing time for people, not much stability. We are all playing much bigger gambles, and that's getting scary. Everyone is vulnerable. When we hear quotes such as these from our fellow developers, it confirms for us that our world is indeed changing. But let me add 2 more. When we focus on what we are passionate about, it just keeps on working, proactive, not reactive. And maybe the 3 little words we need to remember most. Content is king. As the industry evolves, as distribution and business model change, one thing is constant. The primary need is still content. Without quality content, without the imagination of everyone in this room today, there is nothing. there is no industry. To be clear, you are the center of the video game universe. Before I deal with the here and now, I'd like to spend some time talking about the last 25 years of industry history. And it is a kind of shocking for me to realize that I have worked as a video game developer for all of those 25 years. As I said GDC in 2005, I actually began developing games while still college student. My friends and I formed the company known as HAL Laboratory. Back then, being young, I was entirely wrapped up teaching myself video game programming. Somehow, I concluded that I had video game pretty much figured out. Pretty cool, huh? And this impression carried over to my first introduction to Nintendo and Mr. Miyamoto. Also, he's young. Even after starting to work with Nintendo, I had confidence that I was better than anyone Nintendo when it came to programming technique, and the software that I was making was technically superior to Mr. Miyamoto's. And I believe this would be proven when consumers went out to buy our games. Well, I said before, it is the job of game developers to learn from each other. And Mr. Miyamoto taught me a painful lesson. Content really is king. His games outsold mine by a huge margin. I found out then that engineering isn't quite as important as imagination. To be honest, I was ashamed. And during this time, to use the English expression, I lost my attitude. Well, let me talk about these last 25 years in a wider perspective. When we began making video games, there was no industry. Very few of us considered it a profession. It was just a hobby. It was often hard to even define what our roles were. We would all just take turns doing what needed to be done. If ideas were needed, we were game designers. If characters were needed, we were artists. If music or sound effects were needed, then we would create them. And in the same way, we decided who would go out to buy lunch for everyone, who would clean up, and how we would pay the rent. Now, I realize this sounds like a good old days lecture you might hear from your grandfather. But it wasn't necessarily all better. Yes, we had a lot of fun, but there were definite downsides. We made almost no money. And what we produced by today's standards was primitive. We were video game cavemen. Today, everything had changed. Everything is bigger. Graphics processing was increased exponentially, and the addition of the vast amount of memory has erased the boundaries for game worlds. At the same time, all this comes at a cost. Also, much bigger are the size of the teams required to build today's big games, the timeline they require, and the amount of money needed to fund all of this. At one time, development cost of $1 million was unthinkable. Today, many gamers demand titles that cost 50 million or more. It's still fun, but there is a lot more to worry about now than just paying the rent. Fortunately, there is one kind of growth that has helped offset cost, and that's the number of people playing games. As you are all aware, expanding the population of gamers has been basic strategy for Nintendo. That's clear with both Nintendo DS and Wii. But we wanted to measure how big the growth was. We already know how many game machines are being sold by referring sales data like NPD. But this doesn't indicate how often one game machine is shared by several players or who those players are. To understand this, Nintendo has been carrying out large-scale surveys twice a year. This began in May 2005 in Japan, and we later expanded that to both the United States and Europe. Here in America, we collaborate with an independent group to conduct mail surveys with 5,000 people aged 6 to 74. These people agree in advance to take part. Here first is a pyramid chart which indicates breakdown of game players in the United States as of November 2007. The left edge is 6 years old and the right 74. And the upper side is male and the lower side is female. The blue indicate those who have played with a dedicated video game machine owned in that household at least once in the last year. The yellow shows sleeping users who used to play but have not over the last year. And pink non-users are those who have never played a dedicated video game machines. At that time, those actives who had played in the previous year totaled just under 114 million. Now let's look at the same picture in October of last year, 2010. The number of active players over the previous 12 months jumped to just under 160 million. Shown a different way, you can see that 45% of people between age 6 and 74 reported playing their dedicated video game machines in November 2007. And this number jumped to 62% by October 2010. Another chart indicates generated most of that growth. Here, the dark pink bar at the bottom represents owner of either Wii or Nintendo DS. These two machines have been driving force in expanding the US gaming population. And next graph shows the corresponding results in Europe. We have combined the data for 6 countries where Nintendo operates its own business, namely Germany, UK, France, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands. So far, the active user ratio there is much lower than that in the US. But this means even more opportunity for growth. And of course, there are also a number of emerging markets not represented at all in our surveys yet. This is very encouraging for all of us. Another aspect of the past quarter century I'd like to discuss is just a matter of words, but I think it's important. Today, people often talk about social network games, but simply describe them as social games. I believe these are really two very different things. When you hear the term social network, it generally describes a grouping of social human relationships conducted through mobile devices and PCs. And one of the leading activities on such network is video gaming. But this is much different from broadly describing a game as social. In fact, video gaming of a social nature goes back about 50 years. In 1962, an early computer game called Space War was the first to offer head-to-head competition. It existed only in a laboratory. By the 1970s, people were already playing on connected networks with computers, even though all those early online games were text-based. Even with no graphics, people were having fun. Home console machines brought people together playing in the same room. The Atari 2600 launched in the US in 1977, and two controllers were included. About the same time, Nintendo released its TV game 6 and 15 in Japan. So it was only natural for us to equip the Nintendo Entertainment System the same way. Nintendo then made 4-controller possible with the Nintendo 64, and that meant new levels of excitement with games like Mario Kart, GoldenEye, and Smash Brothers. And certainly, a large new audience felt comfortable getting involved with the arrival of the Wii Remote Controller and Wii Sports. Creating multiplayer was more challenging with handheld systems, but it's too evolved. Millions eventually played Tetris head-to-head using a cable to connect their Game Boy systems. In those early days, being social only meant competing. Then Pokemon on Game Boy added new aspects of interacting. Beginning with the launch of Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green for Game Boy Advance in 2004, wireless communications in portable gaming become the norm. Now, I don't want it to seem that Nintendo is taking too much credit for developing the social aspect of gaming. Others were just as active connecting players remotely. To be sure, in recent years, Call of Duty has become an online phenomenon with millions of online play sessions. And Microsoft should be recognized for its considerable investment to build and maintain Xbox Live. I think as creators, we should not ignore all the social entertainment we've provided for a quarter century and more, long before social networks ever existed. Beyond this, I believe the most important lesson of the past 25 years is understanding what it is exactly that most excites and motivates video game players. In America, there is a term for this: must-have. It describes something so compelling that every passionate gamer immediately wants it. If you don't, you feel like you've been left behind. Must-have describes new experiences, and these tend to come from one of three sources. Sometimes that new experience can be delivered by hardware itself. I think, for example, that the first Game Boy may have provided this feeling, since for the first time, numerous games could be carried and played by the owner wherever he went. But creating must-have only with technology is not easy. Second, there were times when a game itself is must-have. We know there is no single type of game or even one genre this is most likely to achieve this status. Names as diverse as Sonic the Hedgehog and The Legend of Zelda, Guitar Hero and the Grand Theft Auto, Tetris, Just Dance, and Angry Birds indicate the potential power of the game developers' imagination, no matter how that imagination is applied. But there is a third source of must-have, which stems from neither hardware nor software. It comes from the players themselves. It's that social appeal of gaming that just I discussed, the way players enjoy connecting either remotely or in person. I think it is remarkable that even after all these years, more than 12 million people still subscribe to World of Warcraft. Now, before we leave this idea of must-have, I want to also address it from the standpoint of the developer, not the player. Because for us, real-world consideration must be made. What will sell enough to offset my development cost? What will keep people employed and my business alive? One way to answer this is to look at the franchises that players have made the most popular over these 25 years and consider the reasons for their appeal. Number one is Mario. It's hard to believe now, but during his debut in arcades, he was considered something brand new. Excitement for Mario and Donkey Kong built through word of mouth. However, Mario was remained popular only because he's changed. Every developer involved in a Mario project understands the need to provide new gameplay elements and deliver unexpected experiences. Mario always evolves. The number two franchise erupted as something entirely new, Pokemon. The fundamental attraction of Pokemon is based on the universal appeal of collecting, training, competing, and trading. From the beginning, multiple versions of each Pokemon series were released. Some Pokemon appear only in one version, and you may notice that Pokemon received from the Friends version may grow faster than yours, so that you want them. These unique aspects were designed to promote interaction. To a great degree, the popularity of Pokemon can be explained by its social nature. The next franchises are not Nintendo properties, but I think all of us recognize their attributes. Number three is one I've already mentioned, Tetris. Tetris was perhaps the first video game to attract a female audience in a meaningful way. Game Boy was available here in America for only the last 5 months of its launch year in 1989. But by the end of that December, already 40% of all Game Boy players were female. The reason was Tetris. And number four is Will Wright's creation, The Sims. I know many of you remember criticism that this wasn't even a game because there was no way to win or lose. Many predicted it would never find an audience. It has sold 125 million copies around the world. So, there are valuable lessons in these top sellers. the need to constantly improve even the popular franchise, offering new surprises, the power of socially connecting players with each other, the value of expanding the game-playing audience to include new people, and the courage to challenge the existing notions of what a video game is and how it should be played. In addition, let me suggest one more aspect that applies to each of these franchises: universal appeal. Appealing to everyone, everywhere, is not easy, but of course, very desirable. I hope some of you will have the chance tomorrow morning to attend the panel hosted by Mr. Tanabe and our developers at Retro. They will talk about the steps they took to make Donkey Kong Country Returns a global hit. Now, I hope you will also allow me to reflect briefly on how I personally learned some of these lessons. At HAL Laboratory, we created the first game that would star Kirby, and we went out and preliminarily gathered purchase orders for only 26,000 copies. That wasn't very encouraging. So, we showed the build to Nintendo and Mr. Miyamoto. They suggested a few changes and offered to become the publishers. We at HAL agreed, but had to cancel all of those purchase orders. Although it was an action title, it was designed so that almost any player could finish it with a little patience. This went against the trend of more and more difficult challenges for players. But Mr. Miyamoto agreed. By itself, allowed us to reach many more potential consumers. We had other conversations concerning universal appeal. For example, the original name translated to English sounded like this: Tinkle Popo. Maybe not the best name. In addition, some people in the Western market said a pink, soft character floating in air would never be accepted. So, in the West, they changed Kirby's color on the box from pink to white. Maybe they thought I would not notice. I did. But in the end, all the arguments were settled in a good fashion. By constantly reconsidering the nature and mechanics of the game, Kirby did not sell just 26,000. The game has sold more than 5 million. So, those were lessons I learned. But one thing I don't want you to conclude is that all this is fine for Nintendo, but that somehow Nintendo is different. Reflecting on my entire career, from college student to corporate president, I can tell you this: in all the important ways, the process of game development is the same for everyone. At Nintendo, it's just as stressful, just as frustrating, and there never seems to be enough time, manpower, or solutions. If there's a way to make it easy, we haven't discovered it yet. So, let me return to the idea of must-have in terms of the future. Selfishly, of course, I hope people decide the next must-have is Nintendo 3DS. It had the chance to capture mass market attention in all three manners: because of technology, and because of new gameplay, and because of the new ways players can socially interact. We also believe it can achieve universal appeal and the power to attract even more new gamers. Every system will contain certain pre-installed software that will include AR games, face readers, and the Mii Maker. We selected these for a reason. They are designed to compel social interaction. It will make people want to say to their friends, "Hey, you've got to see this." Other applications will make owners want to carry their Nintendo 3DS systems around with them, just to find out what new Miis or game elements have been passively transferred to them. Owners won't just go intentionally to a network for a specific purpose. Sometimes the network will find them. In fact, at Nintendo in Japan, some employees have started leaving their workstation for no reason, wandering around different floors with their Nintendo 3DS just to take part in such data transfer. Normally, I would write an internal memo to employees warning against this. But the truth is, I am the one of the people doing it. I must admit that in the overall area of wireless communication and digital downloads, Nintendo can do better. To date, our WiiWare and DSi services have not operated as well as they should. So Nintendo 3DS incorporates specific improvements. In Japan and Europe, we have already identified some of these specific connectivity aspects. In order to update you on plans for America, please welcome the President of NOA, Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Thank you, Mr. Iwata, and good morning, everyone. Let me underscore what Mr. Iwata just said. The primary function of Nintendo 3DS is to play games. Yes, the 3D display is distinctive. Yes, the range of connectivity is distinctive. And the content that can be captured, downloaded, and displayed all in 3D is something you won't find anywhere else. But make no mistake, the system exists to play games. Games created by Nintendo and games created by you. What we're providing consumers are varied entertainments that will help build the total installed base. Systems capable of playing all of our games. Let me talk briefly about those other attractions Mr. Iwata mentioned from an American perspective. And to do that, I would ask you to consider two words: content and location. To begin, all content on Nintendo 3DS is going to look like no Nintendo handheld before, even if you're watching in 2D. You'll notice that the second that you turn it on. And this is particularly true with anything you're streaming from Netflix, a partnership that goes live this summer. And Netflix on Nintendo 3DS is notable in a couple other ways. Say you're away from home, starting to watch a movie on your Nintendo 3DS. You can simply stop viewing when you get home and then pick up where you left off using your Netflix-enabled Wii to feed your big flat panel TV. Of course, in the real world, sometimes other factors get in the way. Maybe when you walk into your family room, your little guy is already streaming SpongeBob. No problem. You can hand him the Nintendo 3DS, set up streaming for him there, while you casually confiscate the big TV. Certainly, Netflix delivers a huge menu of 2D programming. But 3D programming is also on the way. First, movie trailers from Hollywood in 3D. Before Green Lantern launches in mid-June, Nintendo 3DS owners will be watching trailers in 3D. You'll find other examples in our booth this week, and of course, there are many more to come. We're offering studios a distribution vehicle to a large and motivated user base to promote their upcoming releases in 3D without the need for glasses. And those owners will want to share those experiences with others. You can also look forward to our exclusive short-form video service. In effect, a wireless Nintendo channel available only on Nintendo 3DS. Content will include comedy, music videos, and other elements curated by Nintendo for your enjoyment. It's about discovery, but that doesn't necessarily need to mean endless searches by you. We'll do the primary content selection, pushing the most interesting and entertainment content to find you. The fact of the matter is that the world is still in the beginning stages of content creation in 3D. So at Nintendo, we're investing to help accelerate that process. From initial reactions, we know that people are extremely enthused about the 3D photo capability. But the astute among you also noticed in a recent Iwata Ask segment that Mr. Iwata hinted at the added capability to record video in 3D. The promise is great. It could mean a birthday party, a family vacation, or your night on the town with you as your own producer and director operating in 3D. Stay tuned for an update, but let's just say that we're enthused too. On the other side of the equation, there's a second concept, location. I think most of you are familiar with the multiplayer local area connections we employed with Nintendo DS. It was put to good use in Nintendogs and Dragon Quest IX. And in fact, those experiences informed development of the Street Pass mode for Nintendo 3DS. For those of you attending, I believe Mr. Kono can shed more light during his GDC lecture this afternoon. And as Capcom has explained, the new Super Street Fighter IV 3D takes local connectivity to new levels, offering fresh concepts to one of the classic game genres. We're also dramatically increasing remote connectivity with Spot Pass. From past experience, we know the immense potential combining Nintendo gaming and wireless broadband. In Japan, we experimented widely with location-based communications on Nintendo DS. During one initiative, 50% of owners connected via Wi-Fi for free downloadable elements. And at some of those same locations, of course, non-owners also sampled the game. And in those cases, retail sales of those same full games at nearby stores were as much as 6 times higher than those stores further away. Just like the automobile business, test drives drive business. Here in America, we'll build substantially on the Japanese experience. And today, I'm happy to announce that we'll be able, in late May, to have over 10,000 AT&T Wi-Fi hotspots as hubs for Nintendo 3DS. Users will have broad access to a variety of restaurants, bookstores, coffee shops, airports, and more, where they'll be able to automatically connect to Wi-Fi and receive Spot Pass content, access to the eShop, and have the ability to play compatible Wi-Fi games with others, whether across the room or across the country. And of course, all other elements of Nintendo 3DS connectivity will also be available. And that's true whether you're connected away from home or on your own home wireless network. So, in all, 3 new aspects of Nintendo 3DS will maximize your distribution opportunity. First, there will be thousands of new points of Wi-Fi contact. Second, the user will be automatically connected, and Spot Pass content will download in the background, even with the system in sleep mode. And third, the push content doesn't require that the corresponding game be inserted in the hardware. When you create Spot Pass content, your distribution reach will be broad and automatic, like no Nintendo handheld before. Let me also explain the reach of the eShop, a means to access game software in several different ways. First, the existing DSiWare service is included. Second, we'll provide access to selected Game Boy and Game Boy Color titles with the Nintendo 3DS version of the Virtual Arcade. And that library will also include Game Gear and TurboGrafx-16 games. Third, some of your favorite titles from the past, what we're calling 3D classics, will also be available remastered in full 3D. And most importantly, the eShop will feed the game player's need for new titles, both retail and digital. That means trailers, screenshots, background info, and even links to your own websites. In effect, this is a new location for one-stop shopping for both unique and nostalgic game experiences. As we've previously mentioned, not every feature will be available out of the box. Mr. Iwata has announced that the worldwide system update scheduled for late May will deliver many of them. That includes not only the DSiWare download system, but also the ability to transfer your current DSiWare games to Nintendo 3DS. In addition, there'll be a web browser and the eShop. But let me repeat the purpose of all of this. What we're outlining is really an unparalleled ability to promote your work. These new levels of connectivity, new channels for access and delivery, mean millions of consumers will be seeking and finding what you've got to offer them, displayed in full 3D, and of course, in 2D as well. I think that spells win-win for everyone. And with that, let me turn it back over to Mr. Iwata.
Thank you, Reggie. Yes, we really want Nintendo 3DS to be the next must-have. As people have the chance to witness Nintendo 3DS with their own eyes, we are anxious to see how they judge our latest proposal. Reggie just mentioned several new services to be offered on Nintendo 3DS. Now, I'd like to spend some time talking about new games. Earlier, I explained how Nintendo always tries to adopt new elements whenever we introduce new Mario game. For Nintendo 3DS, that process will continue. Let me give one small example. Since 1996, when Mario appeared in 3D in Super Mario 64, it's always been hard for players to judge how to jump and hit a block floating in a 3D space. Watching as Nintendo 3DS was being developed, Mr. Miyamoto told me, finally the day has come when we can solve this. This applies to all movement as players move deeper inside the world or come closer to the screen. Game developers are now able to invent any worlds that we imagine. And this leads to a new Super Mario to debut on Nintendo 3DS. Our team at Nintendo's EAD Tokyo Software Development Department, which created the Super Mario Galaxy series, is currently working on a brand new Super Mario that incorporates the new opportunity of 3D display. This logo is temporary. You may notice something that looks like a tail at the bottom on the logo. You might wonder what that indicates. We will reveal the answer at the E3 this year. So, now that I have talked about Mario, I'm sure some of you may also want to hear about Zelda. First, concerning Ocarina of Time 3D. Our intent is for you to be playing this coming June. 13 years ago, Link began running around a 3D Hyrule world. Now he will be doing it in full 3D. Last year marked the 25th anniversary of Super Mario. This year, it's the 25th anniversary of Legend of Zelda. Mr. Miyamoto is working on a plan that will allow all Zelda lovers to celebrate together. I also want to update you on the new Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for Wii. Game design has advanced to take further advantage of Wii Motion Plus. As a result, player control is shaping up nicely. It feels very solid and is free-ranging. Nintendo in Japan has sent along some new scenes showing Link in battle. Please take a look. Well, I have spent a lot of your time talking about the last 25 years, and I would like to finish with some thoughts about our future. To be clear, our immediate future. Rather than offer you only a rosy picture of our industry, I want to discuss three specific concerns. The first is craftsmanship. Over the past 25 years, we developers have gained a lot, but also lost something. And one major loss is craftsmanship. As projects become bigger and more complicated, often the option of working over and over again to polish a game to make it the highest quality it can be is disappearing. This is not the criticism of the talent of people developing games, but rather the circumstances in which they operate. No matter how much money or manpower is available, no matter how much talent is involved, the needed flexibility may not be available when unexpected development arises. Small details can get lost even in huge projects. My second concern takes me again back to my career at HAL and my early days at Nintendo watching Mr. Miyamoto work. As I said, no one was a specialist. Everyone was a generalist. We could all comprehend what everyone else was doing. To be sure, today there are many people who are better programmers than we were back then, and better artists, better producers. But this era of specialization makes it much more difficult for a single individual to sense the entire nature or personality of a game. Developers know their specific roles much better, but are less able to understand anyone else's. And if people cannot tell exactly what other team members are doing, it makes me wonder, where will the next master game creators come from? My final concern is the most important. When I first spoke at GDC in 2005, very few in the audience were involved making games for mobile download or for social networks. Today, maybe the majority of you are. Our industry has certainly expanded. But it also gives me concern because I fear our business is dividing in a way that threatens the continued employment for many of us who create games for our living. Yes, the developers' hours will always be too long and the stress too high, but until now, there has always been the ability to make a living. Will that still be the case moving forward? Let me share a few numbers. Today in America, there are more than 500 retail games available for PS3, more than 700 for the Xbox 360, and more than 1,000 each for both Wii and Nintendo DS. With so many choices, it is already very challenging to gain enough visibility with the public to achieve true hit status. A few games do become mega hits, but it is not easy. With such competition, even being noticed is extremely difficult. Huge investment promise nothing. Now, consider this. The corresponding number of games available right now to download from the big app sites is in the tens of thousands. Game development is drowning. Yes, nearly every one of these downloadable games is far less expensive to create than most retail titles. But what revenue will they generate? Screen Digest reports that among all types of applications downloaded among the leading mobile services last year, 92% were free. And most software which is not free is still being sold at extremely low prices. Why is this happening? To answer, it's necessary to understand two very different ways of looking at our business. And these approaches focus on a single question. Is maintaining high-value games a top priority or not? First, consider the objective of those of us who manufacture a dedicated video game hardware. At Nintendo, we see hardware as something our consumers reluctantly purchase only to enjoy the games they really want to play. We do not publish games for other platforms because we believe matching our game idea with our hardware design is the surest way to provide meaningful surprises. We are game creator first and manufacturer second. We really want our consumers to appreciate the premium value of software. Although the PlayStation and Xbox businesses are different in some ways from Nintendo's, I believe we all share this idea 100%. We make platforms designed to demonstrate the high value of high-quality video game software. But there is a second, entirely different way to consider the value of software. The objectives of smartphones and social network platforms are, and the reasons these vehicles were created are not at all like ours. These platforms have no motivation to maintain the high value of video game software. For them, content is something created by someone else. Their goal is just to gather as much as software as possible because quantity is what makes the money flow. Quantity is how they profit. The value of video game software does not matter to them. So we are looking at two distinct sides of the video game businesses. One path requires investment that are often too big, and the other provides games that don't maintain high value. The fact is, what we produce was value, and we should protect that value. Please understand, it must be said that all is not lost. Games as diverse as Just Dance, Wii Fit, U-Draw, Wii Sports, Tomodachi Collection, and Art Academy have all found audiences on Nintendo systems alone, and similar stories certainly apply to other platforms. Let me suggest a couple of considerations that I believe can help a game get noticed. First, the central appeal must be evident almost immediately. If you hope a game player will stay engaged for more than 10 minutes in order to understand what you offer, it may be too late. The first sequence of a game are more important than ever. Second, it must be quick and easy for people to describe the unique nature of your game to others. Social recommendations are far more persuasive than advertising. But your idea must be simply understood. If both of these conditions are met, you could reach the tipping point for word of mouth, where your game begins to sell itself. This is the ultimate solution we all seek. Having said all this, there is a single solution to this challenge. It can be stated as a single word: innovation. Yes, there are many definitions, so let me explain how we define innovation at Nintendo. It is very simple. We always ask ourselves the same question: is there something considered impossible that we might make possible? Our belief is that just accepting impossible limits our thinking and sets up barriers to true innovation. For example, at one time, it was thought that people could only view a single display screen at a time. Now, many scan their TV and PC and maybe tablet or phone screen all at the same time. And two screens have certainly proved popular with almost 150 million Nintendo DS owners worldwide. Sometimes what is possible is only hiding behind false conclusion. I began today by including a quote from the CEO of TimeGate, and I like to conclude the same way. He said, "We always have a game concept that we are very excited about, and then we validate it as a real business opportunity." The opposite approach, identifying a hot business trend and then trying to decide how to capitalize on it, is a scary proposition. If the job of GDC is to learn from each other, I believe we can all learn from this. Trust your passion. Believe in your dream. For 25 years, game developers have made the impossible possible. So I ask you, why would we stop now? Thank you so much for your attention today.